Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. We're kicking off the weekend with another live stream. Today, we're going to be doing part two of our River Village stream. In part one, we were able to create the terrain. You always build from the ground up. And then we were able to make the structures. We were able to do some of the interior for House A. And as you can see, I also did some changes off screen. And I'll be sure to go over those changes as well so that you're not scratching your head going like, whoa, this is a big difference from part one than from part two here. So we'll go over that. Hey, everybody. See you all in the chat. I see you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your support. Some of my greatest supporters are here. Appreciate seeing you all. Some of you, it's pretty late from what I understand. So thank you for being here. In part two, we're going to be focusing on kind of putting together the watermill, and then maybe we'll do the interior of one of the other houses, maybe B or C. I'm probably going to add a bridge, and then I want to go over some of the brushes for the new brush 2.0 because the brushes are really helpful. Like before, there was only one type of brush, and so blending was a little bit more monotonous, but now with the new brushes, you'll be able to very easily blend textures with each other. So we're going to go over some of those brush options there and how to utilize them when we're painting our terrain, including our water. So we'll go over that. So first, a real quick announcement. We're going to be doing new thumbnails. Hey, Tanit. We're going to be doing new thumbnails, which is going to include like the difficulty. So like 1, 2, and 3 stars, 1 being beginner, 2 being intermediate, 3 being advanced. So we'll include a difficulty level. We're just kind of changing up the look for YouTube, especially with the thumbnails for the new year. So always nice to kind of do some new things for the new year, right? All right, so the things that have changed is that this has been converted from the version 1 to version 2.0. The way that you do that, if you have an older map, as long as it's not too old, some maps are so old that they will not be able to convert because there's an incompatibility issue. So usually maps are like, I think the ones I've seen are anywhere between like 2 and 3 years old. I think 3 for sure. Those ones I haven't been able to convert. So and some are even older when you can't even open. But if you have a map that allows you to convert, if you'll go up here, let's say you have an older map made before 2.0, up here, right below remove private assets, it's not here, but you'll see it and it will say enable custom layers feature. It's going to be right beneath the remove private assets. When that happens, it's going to convert the map over to layer 2.0. And you'll notice 2.0 over here because you'll see that there's a more advanced layer options right here. We have, or sorry, over here, these layer options, and you'll see you'll be able to create any number of layers. Okay, now I did make this in 1.0, so you'll notice that I did change the name of some things like land and FG, water BG. Those things I labeled myself, they're not there. Now, some of you did notice that when you make a new battle map, that this land tool isn't there. If you ever get confused about that problem, if you click on a brush layer that you create right here, and then you go into the, and if you double click, let me click right here, it says there'll be a little shovel here. This is a layer mask or a shape mask. If you select that little land style options right there, it will have enable land style, and it's going to have all of your presets here. So before we had it to where that wasn't there. So this is just kind of recent, but you can still add mask effects to your brush layers by just clicking on the mask and then that little gear right there, and then there'll be this enable land style, so you'll be able to use those mask effects. Before, we were getting a lot of confusion before about the land tools, so this should kind of make it a little bit easier. So notice that, and you'll also notice that now you can create any number of layers. So I've got 2 object layers and 2 brush layers. My object layers include labels, which are these where if I click on this right here, you'll see the objects in that layer. It's just all text. The text is to help me to remember what each object or what each building is. So if I go over to structures down below, click on this layer, you'll notice that the labels correspond with the name of each building. This just makes it easier. So I did all of this off screen. I simply selected everything within like house B, and then I grouped it, and then I labeled it. This is also, it's just easier because what happens is once you start having a lot of objects on a single object layer, you'll end up having to use your mouse scroll wheel and just scroll forever trying to find something. So grouping things is a way of like making it easier. So you'll notice that there are no kind of floating assets outside of the groups, right? Everything is grouped, everything is labeled. And this is not something that you have to do, by the way. It's okay if you want to not use groups at all, or if you're used to using version 1.0, you don't have to do all of these various layers. The thing is that it's if you only have the skill to work 1.0, 2.0 is pretty easy to work with. The people that get most confused with, it's just this layer part over here, and they get confused with the FGBG thing. So because the land tool wasn't available for the battle map styles. So if you get confused about where mask effects are, it's that right here, you're going to have that shape mask, and you'll click on it right here like this, and there's that. Oh yeah, Andrew, if you have any problems with your maps, feel free to send a support ticket, and I'll gladly help you there. So probably won't be able to get back to you until Monday of next week because it's Friday. So just be patient with me about that, all right? All right, so I think I've overall kind of explained a little bit about all the things that I did off screen, and I kind of showed you where the mask effects are. So now there shouldn't be too much confusion about that. Let's also get started on just kind of putting things together. So for now, I'm just going to click this little eyeball right here to hide a layer. See, I can quickly just hide layers very simply. I'll just turn that off because I don't need it for right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down and move right over to where the water mill is, which is right here. And I have that labeled right here. So if I click this, here are all the stamps that I have within that. Okay, so what we'll do from here is we're going to start picking some items for the functional part. So I don't normally add details. What I'll do is I'll look at a building and say, what is the function of this building? It's a water mill, so I'm going to need components that you would find in a water mill. And I'm not going to add any details. I'm going to start with just the main components. That's going to be things like the grindstone, which is that big millstone that grinds the millet or whatever the crop yields that you have. It's going to grind it down into a grain. You're also going to have the water wheel itself. That's going to be the wheel in which the current of the water is spinning that wheel to give power to the gears and to the grindstone or the millstone, right? So we want to look for those elements. So we'll go into the catalog first and just type in mill because those things should be in there. You see we do have some milling gears, and we also, let's go ahead and expand all assets so we can kind of take a look at it here. These look like milling gears, but we need is a water wheel. We'll have to find that. Let's look for that. Let's type in water. I do believe there should be a water wheel in here. There it is right there. Let's do the revised one. There we go. We'll scale it down. Don't want it to be massive. Here we go. We're going to have stick that, and I'm going to put it down below a layer so that it's below. Like this. Let's scale it up just a little bit more. There we go. I'd say about that size looks about good. Right about there. So it's a fairly decent size. Let's go down a little bit more. About that looks good. And then we'll also look up that grindstone as well. Should be able to type in mill. Here we go. I'm going to go ahead and add the names so that I can kind of see them. I think this is the revised one. This one will work great right here. So here's your millstone, and we'll go ahead and connect these together like this. There we go. Now we have a millstone. I'll make sure that the rod there is connected right there like this. And also it's indoors. So I'll just go ahead and bring the brightness down a little bit. Don't want it to be too bright. And just so that it pops out, so it looks like it's not just sitting on the floor, we're going to add a shadow to give some ambient occlusion. And ambient occlusion will make it look like it's kind of raised above the floor a little bit. So we'll go with shadow. We'll go with custom object shadow. We'll go right here. And let's just go ahead and bring the shadow down so it's a little noticeable. There we go. That looks good. Okay. And then one thing I also do is I want to make sure that there's walkable room, right? So one of the things that I'm always thinking about is something called foot traffic, right? How people walk around. So when people walk in like this, there's room to get around to each one of these locations. So I tried to make sure that it wasn't too big. Like if this millstone was any bigger, it'd be a tight squeeze trying to move around. So I tried to make sure that there's enough room, right? Okay, so now that we have those components together, we can go back into the water mill here. There we go. Let's just scale this down a little bit. Oh, I'm glad you were able to figure it out with 2.0 or rebuild them. I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but I hope that it turned out for the best with you. All right, let's go ahead and place that there. I think for me, I kind of find that the water wheel is a little bright against this bright kind of roof color, this thatch roof. So what I think I'll do is I'll bring the brightness down and turn it into like a darker wood. I think that might look a little better. There we go. That looks good. Now I have that water mill. Okay. And then I think that makes up most of that interior, what you're going to have inside of there. Let's go ahead and take a step back and just see how it looks. I'd say that grindstone is probably a little too small. We could make it just a little bit bigger. I want to make sure that we can get what we can out of it. There we go. Let's go and line it up right. That looks good. Okay. All right, let's take a step back. Yeah, I'd say the water wheel's a little too big. Yeah, let's do that. Don't want it to be completely massive. Here we go. What about there? Looks good. Turn off the shadow for now. There we go. Okay. Functionality of that structure is pretty much done. Okay, let's go ahead and take a step back, see how it looks. I think overall I'm satisfied with that. It looks good. Okay. All right, let's go over to some of our other structures, and we'll also add in some interior elements to it. All of these are houses. If I go up to label here, you'll see that I have everything labeled. So these are all houses, just one functional building right here, the water mill. You can have as many as you want. What I would recommend is if you feel like this is too small of a village, then you would just use the resize feature. So you would go up to the hamburger menu here and just look for that resize map to region. Just know that what that will do is it will condense the size of the other stamps that are on that map there. So just kind of know that things will get smaller. So when you do that, so keep that in mind. And when it comes to a full-size village on a battle map, my recommendation is not to have too many buildings, because then you just keep changing your scale, because it's going to have to get smaller and smaller to fit all of those buildings. So when I'm making like a village of some kind, I generally don't have more than about 5 or 6 buildings, so that way I have a more usable or a more functional scale. I try not to make massive villages, so especially with a battle map, because again, you're messing with that scale. All right, let's go ahead and do house C. We'll go ahead and add in some details in here. So here I have house C right in structures. Here's house C. And just like I did in house 1, and I mentioned this in part 1, is that when you're doing interior decorating, you always start with the largest furniture first, right? If you start with small things first, it's gonna take longer to populate the room, right? That's step 1. 2, what it also does is that the largest furniture goes in first, so that way you can figure out how walking around, if people can fit and move around, you'll know where to put details, like was there gonna be a detail on a bed? Is there gonna be a detail on a table or a bench? So you always start with the largest pieces of furniture first. And I usually start in the bedroom, or sometimes I'll start in the first room where the entrance is. It really just depends what you're feeling, right? Sometimes you're like, well, I don't really know what to do for the bedroom yet. Well, then go do the living room. If you don't know what to do for the living and kitchen area, then go move to another room, right? So that way it's not too hard for you. So what I'll do is I think I started in the bedroom last time. What I'll do is I'll start here first, and we'll get that going. Okay. Is there a corner hanging over the edge here? That's the roof. So I don't think, if you look carefully here where the ledge is here, what you're seeing is the roof overhangs, but not necessarily the wall. That thatch right there is a roof. So you would expect the roof to overhang a little bit, right? So that way water can run off of it. So that's probably what you're seeing there, Dova Phonius. Good question, though, by the way. I'm glad you asked. Okay, let's go back over here to house here. So when you're putting together the house, like you notice that I've already placed a fireplace in here. Now this already gives you an idea that this area right here is both a living space, but it's also a cooking space, because you're going to use that fireplace to do your cooking. So it makes sense to probably put a kitchen space somewhere in here. And what I'll do is I'll move the fireplace off to the side like this so that I can create room. If it's centered like this, if it's centered, then there's a problem of trying to fit things in between the two small spaces to the side of it. But if I move the fireplace off to either side, it's going to create extra room in these areas over here to place furniture. So if I move this fireplace over to here, I now have this whole section right here to add some furniture. So why don't I add like a kitchen table or maybe like a table to prepare food? Start with that. This long table works just fine. I'm just going to place it right here like this, and we'll make sure it goes down a layer beneath. There you go. So now I have a kitchen. I have a table of some kind for sitting. Why don't we also add, since this is preparing food, what about a place to sit and eat? So let's maybe look for a smaller table that we could use. Let's see here. I'll take a look. Oh, here's one right here. Oh, there's the new version of it. Great, let's use that one. And what I'll do is I'll just go and place it right here up against this wall. Right here. And then I can just put 2 chairs on either side of that. Oopsie, here. Not sure what that is. I hope, by the way, Dovaphonius, that explained it for you. Let's see here. Let's go with backs. So we'll add a chair there. And if you ever get confused about scale, you notice that I already have a door right here that kind of represents 5 feet here. Well, I'm going to use that as your reference. Oh, great, Dova. I'm glad that it worked for you. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and put here. So we have a preparation table right here. We have a sitting table for eating here. That makes sense. Why don't we actually push this all the way up against the wall? And then we can move this over to here a little bit. That way there will be a little bit of room for maybe a log pile right here. So maybe some logs or firewood pile. I think right here, stacked or chopped logs. Let's do that. We'll place that right there in the corner there. Let's push it down that layer. I want it to interact with the wall shadows, so put it beneath. You obviously don't want a stack of woods on top of the wall. You want it to be beneath it. So we'll put a stack of wood there. Let's also move this fireplace over a little bit, create a little bit more room. There we go. That looks good. Okay, I think all the major things in here, I think the only other thing I could probably add is some kind of cabinet or dresser. Okay, let's go ahead and use a small dresser. And then let's put a small dresser just like right. Let's put it actually on top of the table. Like this. There we go. And then that way there's like a little dresser. So maybe it's a cabinet of some kind. So maybe china or silverware or whatever goes there. So you have a flat cooking prep space. You also have a cabinet for storage. You have seating for eating. You have your fireplace and chopped wood. And so I think all of the major things inside of this room are done. And we can add details later. Why don't we move into each room? And let's say that there's 2 occupants to this room. So we could go ahead and type in bed. And we'll just go ahead and put single beds in. And the best place to put beds are generally up against the wall. If you have a larger room and it's a double bed, then you would want to put it more in the center so that way occupants can get access to both sides of the bed. But this is kind of a small residence. So what we'll do is we'll just do 2 small ones. I'm going to put them right up against the wall. One like this, and then I'll just go ahead and copy and paste the other one right here like this. There we go. That looks good. Some other things you might want to consider doing is maybe adding in a dresser inside of it. Maybe I want to put a dresser right here up against this thing right here so that way the dressers are right at the foot of the bed so that when people go to get out of their bed, they can just walk right over to that dresser and change into their clothes. So we'll put the dresser there. That looks good. You can also put in things like maybe you want a small table, like maybe someone has a little desk where they can sit and do some reading, or it's a desk for writing a book or whatever it might be. So putting a desk, and let's make it just a little bit smaller. And the reason why is because I want to have room here so that when people walk in here, there's a little bit of space there. Notice how you can fit about a chair worth of space there. And then I have a table there with that. And we can actually change the room up a little bit. Let's maybe do something different. This time we'll add in another dresser, but we'll put a full-on dress in here, something larger, and then we can put that dresser right here like this. And that would change up the symmetry of the room. I don't want each room to be exactly the same, the layout. You would expect that each occupant has a different style of interior decorating. Maybe they have a different arrangement that fits their, personality, right? So having each room be different, unless it's like an inn of some kind, then it kind of helps to show the character of who lives in that room by what you put in it, right? So having it separate layouts will kind of show that kind of individuality of the people that live there, right? So we'll do that. So I think overall this looks pretty good. There's probably some details we can add in there, but I just wanted to add in the major furniture first. Remember, you always start with largest furniture first, and then you will put in your details later. So let's go over to house B then, and we're going to do that same thing. And I made house B a little bit different. This little wooden section right here is what's called a half step. If you're not certain what a half step is a half step just means that it's just one step that goes up to just a slightly elevated space in whatever building this is. Okay, and what a half step does is a half step creates elevation change. It makes the room more unique and more interesting. It adds a little bit more depth to the room, and it allows you to change the texture of the floor, right? So because there's the stone floor at the bottom where the entrance is, there's this half step, and that half step and the floor is made out of wood. And that allows you to create some contrast, right? Because now you have a stone gray neutral texture now against a brown, reddish, warm color texture, right? Making it more interesting. So you see that I'll be doing that a lot in my architecture. I like to add half steps or maybe a couple half steps, changing up the floor textures, making it more interesting. Okay, I noticed that I kind of missed a little bit of painting right here. Notice that I have that texture there. In my history, there should be those textures, and I want to make sure I'm on the right layer. I made these with the FG layers in mind, so I'll set that. Make sure it's set to that FG or land, what I called land there. Notice how I clean that right up. Oopsie. You're always going to make some mistakes. You're always going to miss something, and that's okay. Don't think of it as an error. Think of it as, something you just have to clean up. It's okay. All right, so we started in the living room, this room before. Why don't we start with in here this time? And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and create a bed. And I'll just make sure that I got the scale right. That looks right. Perfect. And this is the main space here. Why don't we put a larger bed up against here like this? Actually, let's move it like this. There we go. And the reason why I'm placing the bed here and not like right here is because of space. Look carefully. See how this space right here is bigger? Notice how there's enough space to walk on that side of the bed, and there's enough space on this side of the bed to walk, and we can also add in like a dresser and some stuff. So if you ever have a hard time figuring out where to place things, like furniture, sometimes it's as simple as just, what is the space that I'm working with, right? Because it's such a big bed, I can't place it in this smaller space over here. I need to place it in this bigger space. So just kind of think about that when you're putting things together. Let's put a custom object shadow in there, just so there's some ambient occlusion. There we go. Let's bring the blur out a little bit. That looks good. Okay. All right. So there's a bed there. That looks good. Let's go ahead and also add in a dresser. Let's put the dresser, because it's a couple, it's two double person bed. Let's put a larger dresser. That makes sense, right? There's two occupants instead of one occupant in this room. So a double dresser means more room for those occupants, unless they each have their own separate dressers. You could put two smaller dressers, a his, her, hers, his, whatever it is might be, right? So you can always have two dressers for whoever lives here. That's up to you. And we'll go ahead and also add in maybe a desk of some kind. Let's put in a desk right here. I'll bring the scale down. We'll move it over to here. And then also I'll go ahead and put a chair. Make sure that I got that scale right real quick. Yep, as I thought. There we go. Put that right beneath that. There we go. Below a layer. There we go. Now I have that desk. Okay, let's go ahead and add in a couple more things. Let's also put a chair, a table like right here. Yeah, there are tons of fancy. Oh, we need more not fancy desks. Oh yeah, good point. We do. That's not a, I don't disagree with that. Let's go ahead and put our another table down here as well. And this is like your prep space. And in fact, I think what I'll do is I'll move this table actually over to here like this. So there'll be a desk over here. Make sure there's enough room. I'm going to use this chair as a guide to see how much space that I have. So there's enough room there. That looks good. And then this way I can also put in a dining room table right here like this. There we go. Now I have my dining room table. Let's scale it down just a little bit. And then I'll go ahead and put my chairs in like this. There we go. And then one thing I'm noticing about this is this half step. This half step is about the same thickness as the walls. Why don't we bring that half step size down a little bit? There we go. Now it doesn't look like a wall piece. Now it looks more like a half step. It's just a little mistake that I kind of noticed there. It's easy to fix. Let's go ahead and just go back and just paint in the spots. Fill it in. There we go. Looks good. There we go. Now that makes a little bit more sense. I was getting a little thrown off by that size there. Perhaps a window is missing? Oh yeah, we can totally add windows to these. That's a great idea. I'm not against that at all. I like that. In fact, why don't we add windows? Because we added windows to this one. As you can see, there's a window. There's a window. So let's do the same. Okay, so we'll go over back to house B. And we'll go ahead and type in window. There we go. And there should be some of the new released Core 2.0. Perfect. Now, if you're ever curious about where to put windows, I mean, it really just depends. One, windows are expensive, so you might not find a whole lot of like glass windows on maybe like a village, right? Glass would be very expensive. It's something like lords and ladies would have been able to afford. That doesn't mean that you have to follow that analysis in your world. Maybe your world is more egalitarian. Maybe it's a better world, right? So I don't want to force you into that box, but just as a general rule, I'm kind of just using historical context that generally, when it comes to having more expensive windows like glass, it would have been people who could afford that. That would have been the case. But this is a fantasy world, and you can have as many glass windows as you want on your thatch buildings as you want, right? So that's entirely up to you. Now, if you don't necessarily want glass windows on yours, you can create your own windows in other ways. Actually, there's some cool ways that you can create windows. You can do them by just making your own, and I'll show you a cool way to make a glassless window. And that trick is pretty simple. In episode 1, I had you use these little posts, these little pieces right here. What these are going to represent, copy, paste, these are going to represent the posts of your window, right? And then from there, you're going to go in and you're going to use a darker variation of that. See this wall right here? You're going to use a darker variation of that wall. Okay, I'm going to take a darker variation like this. I'm going to turn off my shadow and I'm going to scale it up to where it's around the same size as the wall there. And then I'm going to bring the brightness down, and that's going to represent an opening, right? So if I bring the brightness down, 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 you'll notice what that brightness does is it creates this illusion that there's an opening in the window and there's no glass, right? So you can make your own window by simply adding 2 of those little wooden posts and then adding a darker variant of the wall beneath those posts, and now you have a glassless window, right? And when it comes to those windows, by the way, how did you get the wall post? If you just type in wood, I'll go into the catalog and I'll show you. Let's go into the catalog. So now those are 1.0 ones, but there are 2.0. If I just type in wood like this, and I think, oh, actually, I think it's in core. Let me look up core. I think they're in core 2.0. Pretty sure they're in core 2.0. Let's actually type that in 2.0. Yeah, they're right here. Wooden pillars is what they're called. I'm using the older ones, by the way, because this was made with 1.0. So I would recommend using the 2.0 variants because they're better. But I'm not going to go through and replace every single one of these. So I would recommend the 2.0 variants because the art is just better. Just kind of keep that in mind. And if you do like that window, by the way, I think it's house B, we'll go ahead and just select that and we'll create group, and then we're going to call it a window. And now that I have that glassless window, I can just copy that group and then kind of move it over, right? So we could put another window in, let's go back into house B, and you could put a window like right here. So I'll just turn this around, flip it, and place it right there like this. And then you have a little window right there. I can also go back over to house C, copy paste, and then I can put a window where I want it. Like maybe I want to put a window right here like this. Now I have a little window right there. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of go about making windows. There you go. I think that looks good. We can just say that this house has windows because maybe they're just wealthier or whatever logic that you want to use. Just if you put down some basic ground rules, I think it's easier to kind of figure out how you want to set it up. So, all right, let me check out for time here. Where are we at? Sweet. Half hour. Sweet. We got tons of time. Yeah, let's just keep going. I think let's go ahead and let me see what's going on in the chat here. Okay. Yeah, you could just use the node endings, which will have those little posts on there. I think they're called wooden pillars. They might actually have them on there already, but you won't be able to darken. If you darken that, it will darken all of it. You want the wooden pillars on the sides of the window to stay that same brightness as the wall, while bringing the wooden piece in between needs to be dark, because that's going to represent an opening, right? If it's light, then it's going to look like it's just a part of the wall. So just kind of keep that in mind. You're using contrast to show depth, right? Lighter, higher up, darker, further down. Contrast is your trick to creating depth, and that includes light and shadow as well. And we'll go over that in another episode. Let's go ahead and we'll add in the details, and we'll start with the watermill. And details are not complex, right? Remember, we talked about the function decides the form of a structure, but the function of a room also decides what details we're going to go into. So if this is a watermill, it's not a house, right? So you're going to expect things like crates, barrels. Maybe you're going to expect things like bags of grain. Maybe you're going to find tools. Maybe you'll find a hay pile in the corner somewhere, right? So if you're struggling with what details to add to a room, it's not complex. Whatever the function of that room is going to decide the details, and also what big furniture or bigger things are already in there, right? Those things will decide what things you're going to be putting inside of it. So if I go over back to the watermill, there's a couple things that I want to add, and I think I'll just do the details for this one because I did want to show you the brush and I wanted to make a bridge. So we're going to go over that shortly. First, we'll go ahead and just add some details in here. And some of the easiest stuff to put in here first is going to be things like maybe adding in a sack, right? Because that's how you would store your grain, right? You put it in like a burlap sack. So let's type in sack, and you'll notice that there are some here. These are the farm revised. Let's go with those. Let's start with regular bags here first, and we'll go ahead and stack some in a corner like this. We'll stack 4 across, and then I'll just put 1 on top of each one of those, and we'll just kind of create a pyramid of a stack there. And then what I'll do for contrast is I'll have one bag on the floor that's spilled open, and that will create some contrast. And by contrast, I mean all the other bags are sealed while one bag is ripped open. That's going to create this contrast. How did it open? Maybe there were some rats, maybe there was a thief, maybe a wizard, who knows, right? So adding in a little bit of contrast like this will make it more interesting. The other contrast I'm doing is I'm rotating it a little bit, right? To give it look like, well, if the bag is ripped, then it got moved a little bit, right? So I'll rotate it a little bit, right? To show that there was some motion, right? If the bag got ripped open, it had to get moved a little bit for that to happen. So we'll go ahead and rotate it a little bit so that it's not perfectly lined up with the other sacks. It's ripped open, so I have that nice contrast, and it creates a story, right? How did that bag get ripped, right? And that adds to the interestingness of your story. So let's go ahead and add in a couple other things, like maybe we can have some revised sacks that are like opened up, like maybe we can put one in a corner right there. Maybe we can put some there, put another one there, and then maybe one in this corner over here. Like that looks good. And then let's also type in some crates as well. Maybe the crates have parts for repairing. So let's go put a couple crates in the corner. We'll put one there, and then we'll vary their sizes as well. So we'll put one crate there and another one in this corner right here like this. I don't want it to get too much in the way of repairing that, so let's move that crate over to there. The other thing you can add is like a hay pile, right? So we'll go ahead and maybe take this hay pile, and then we'll go ahead and place that one just right here in this corner right here, right in that corner. And then let's also type in maybe a tool of some kind. Oopsie. No, still don't know how to do it. Let's type in fork. There should be a pitchfork in here. Nope, let's type in tool. Or maybe pitch will work. Let's try it out. Ah, there we go. Let's make sure that I have the revised one. There we go. And put a little tool. And we'll have it to show that it's leaning against the pile. We'll go ahead and put it just like that. So it's leaning up against the pile. There we go. Yeah, we can put in rats for sure. You can add any detail that you want. Yeah, rats. I like that idea. We could put them by the, maybe these are special rats, right? Like maybe they're leaving a little trail. We'll go ahead and put them by the thing here. Let's put a couple maybe going away from there over to here somewhere. Maybe they're making a trail that leads over to inside this corner somewhere like that. There we go. That looks good. Great details. Great choice, by the way, Bitter Dan. Love it. Loving the suggestions. Feel free to throw any suggestion that you want in the chat. I do not mind. Okay. I think that looks good. The other thing that I want to do is let's go quickly over some good brushes that will be helpful. And what we can do is we're going to go into that catalog, and I'm going to type in hay. And you notice that all of these are just a flat, solid kind of texture. There's no alpha. There's no overlay. So what I'll do is I'll type in dry grass instead. Type in dry. You'll see this dry grass right here. I'm going to change that scale. And what I want to do is, because this is a mill, you're going to expect to see a lot of grain and hay and a lot of dirt on the ground, right? It's constantly grinding, right? So you're going to expect some of that mess, right? So I'll make sure that I'm set to the layer that I've labeled land or FG. And I'm going to go over here to brushes. And you'll see there's these official brushes right here. Well, there's a lot of cool ones that you can kind of work with here. Honestly, I would go with like maybe Dirt 1. Dirt 1 works good. You could also use Spaghetti, which I think would also work good. Let's try Spaghetti. And I'm going to bring the opacity down as well. And wherever I see hay is where I want to maybe add some of that. So I'll put some like, oh, you know what? That's a little too bright. Let's bring the brightness down just a little bit. So we'll go back in, bring the brightness down. There we go. Okay, that should be better. And then I'll go ahead and just kind of paint wherever I see hay. Obviously, wherever the millstone is, you're probably going to expect some of that. Let's also put some by the bags, maybe some spilled over when it was placed or put inside the bag. So let's put a little bit of dry dirt there, maybe some dry dirt in this corner. That looks good. That looks good. Alpha is not really the best texture to use to kind of showcase this. So we'll make sure to use other textures so you can kind of see it. But just to show motion, you have dirt, you have hay, you have that stuff kind of floating around, and it just gives it a little bit more character, and it creates contrast, right? You have that neutral gray color with this, again, these brighter, more brown, reddish light colors. Again, gray is a neutral color, so you could put any color on top of it, and it would still look good, right? Because neutral colors don't require that to work with every other, don't have to work like complementary colors do, where they only work with certain colors. Neutral colors work with every color. That hay could be blue, green, red, yellow. It doesn't matter, because that is a neutral. The gray is a neutral color. A little color theory there to kind of help you out. Okay, let me take a step back and look at it. 40 minutes. Let's go ahead and create that bridge. And I want to create a bridge that goes across like this. And I'm just going to use a wooden bridge for that. And I think what I'll do is I'll use the line tool to do that instead of having to piece together a bunch of things. So if I just type in wood, or I can type in bridge, there should be some options here. Like there's an orc wooden bridge, orcs 2.0, there's sewers, there's this eastern village right here. Let's just go use that. I think that looks nice. Let's go use that one. I'm just going to go like this, go across. There we go. Now I have my bridge. That looks good. And then I'm also going to create some steps to show that the bridge, it rises up a little bit, because what I want to show is that maybe I want boats, or maybe I want the bridge to be higher up so that way it doesn't get flooded out in maybe the rainy season of this location. I'm going to put some stairs down as well. So I'll just type in stair. Oopsie, didn't get into the catalog there. And we'll look for a stair that's going to match the best with those stamps. So I'm just going to take a look at what might be the best choice here. Let's try this birchwood. That might look good. Let's go ahead and create a little bit of stairs there. That's a little too much. Let's maybe scale it up a little bit. There we go. And I want it to match a little bit more. So I think actually, what I'll do is I'll make little tiny steps myself. So check this out. What we'll do. Okay. Okay, we're going to go over to this one, and I'm going to create tiny little steps by just doing this, like that. There we go. Enter. Okay, let me see if I can turn off the caps on this real quick. Caps. There we go. Okay. Now I've got the caps off. That's great. And then from here, I'll just I'm going to turn these into a series of steps. And to show that there's various steps, I'll use brightness or contrast to do that. So to show that this step is below, like this, I'll place that there like this. Then I'll copy and paste. Then I'll flip, bring it down a layer, and then bring the brightness down even more. Like that. And then I'll copy and paste and do it again. Bring it down one layer, and then bring the brightness down even more. So now I have my 3 steps. And what I'll also do is I'm going to also take those 3 lines right there. Oopsie, let's go ahead and make sure I got them all selected. Let's go ahead and lock that. And then I'm going to add all of these. And I want to make sure that there is an object shadow as well. There we go. Because what you're noticing is that you can't tell the height difference too much, but by going ahead and adding in some ambient occlusion to the stairs like this, it makes it a little bit easier. Let me go ahead and close this so we can see that better. There we go. Make some adjustments to the shadow. There we go. Bring the intensity up just a little bit. There we go. And now I can create group. Some stairs there. Copy, paste. And now I have some stairs that I just made myself. And I made sure it's the same material. Okay, let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and unlock that. We'll go back to structures. We'll open this back up. Let's take that bridge and unlock it. There we go. And now I can kind of move it around like this. Let's move it like, I think that looks good. Just want to make sure that we can kind of get across here. That looks good. Okay, let's move it even more this way. I'll take a step back to see what it looks like. There we go. That looks good. Okay, I think overall that looks good. We have a whole bridge there. Let's go ahead and create group, and we're going to call it bridge. There we go. Now I have that as a group. I can go ahead and lock that so I don't have to select it. Oh, yeah. Is there... yes, that was added back, Better Dan. That was indeed added back. Actually, I think that was just added back maybe today. The devs, we were getting a lot of tickets kind of saying that, you know, removing that tool was confusing. So you can totally find those options. Again, for those of you who maybe just walked here, if you're ever curious about mask effects now, even within battle map styles, you'll notice that if you have a brush layer and you add a mask layer, you'll notice right here, it has this little gear right here. You'll see enable land style. And what that is just the effects, like the shadows, the stroke. So if you're confused, like, well, wait a minute, what happened to the mask effects because I was using them? That's okay. You'll find them in the shape, the land or the shape mask that is with your brush layer, okay? So if you ever get confused, that'll help. All right, so let's actually use some of the 2.0 brushes. First, we'll go ahead and pick a texture to represent our dirt. I've already got this one. I think that looks good. And I'm going to use an actual brush that's called dirt. You'll find that helpful. So if I just go to dirt, we'll use dirt 1. That looks good. And you should bring the opacity down a little bit. Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned it, Bitter Dan. Thank you. And I'm going to make sure I'm set to my FG. And I'm going to go ahead and go like this. And you'll notice that when I apply it, it doesn't create these circles. What it does is it creates a better blend. Notice how it's kind of blending a little better. And wherever I'll create a little path that goes off screen and then goes to this piece right here. Like this. Same thing here. I want to go on this side and make sure that the path is connected to this bridge right here. I'm also going to move the bridge just a little bit more this way. There we go. That looks better. There we go. That looks good. I'm enjoying that bridge. That looks good. Where are we at for time? 46. Sweet. Yeah, let's go ahead and do some more brush stuff. I'm going to show you how I kind of go about doing some both shadowing, but how I also do like texturing. So let's talk about a little bit about how to do texturing for water. And one of the big secrets that I've learned is that you can use that trick of contrast again, right? And we're going to use like a white water like texture, and we're gonna paint the edges of our river so that it looks like there is some interaction between the water and the land. Because right now you just see this flat, very flat, straight line where the water is, and that it wouldn't look like that, right? So let's go ahead and go over some ideas on how to fix that. First thing we should do is we should look up a snow alpha texture, and there's a couple of them. Let's go to Inkarnate. Now let's go to battle maps, actually. Yeah, we already have that open. Great. Let's see here. Here we go. Inkarnate. So you'll notice that when I open up, click that Inkarnate tab, all the snow textures are available. Let's go ahead and use these snow textures, these alphas. You're going to find this helpful. The other thing you might want to consider doing is using a different brush for it. And there's a lot of different variations of brushes that you can use here. And we'll kind of go over them. Like this grainy one might work, and this cloudy one might work. Let's go with cloudy and just see how it looks. Okay, I'm going to make sure I set to water so that when I paint it, you'll see how it paints there. And what we'll do is, this is going to take multiple strokes. This isn't something that you're going to make where it's just one brush stroke and it's done. It's going to take multiple brush strokes to kind of get the effect that you want. So what you'll do is you'll just take your mouse or your pen and just start adding a little bit of white water along your edges here to kind of show that the water is actually indeed interacting with the land, right? It's not just this flat line. What we're basically trying to do is we're trying to diffuse the land with a line between the land and the water. We want to diffuse that line, meaning that you don't want to see just this flat line in between these two terrain elements, right? So we're going to do that by doing some contrast tricks, by throwing in a little bit of white water along the edge. That's a good start. And I'm particularly going to add a lot of that right here where the water wheel is, right? Because the thing is that the water wheel is going to be interacting a lot with the water, right? It's spinning as the water moves. To show that motion, I'm going to add a little bit of that water, that snow texture along the edge here. That's going to be helpful. And you know what? We'll also use mask effects. Why not? Not everyone uses mask effects with the... not everyone uses them, but that's okay if you don't. But I think this is a good start. And so let's just take a step back and see what it looks like. So already you kind of notice that there's some diffusion going on. That line is now not this flat, straight line. How did I choose the brush? Right here. If you go over to the brush tool right here, I click that open, and then right here, you click down and you'll see a series of brushes. You can just use the mouse scroll wheel to go down. And I recommend using them because they're going to be very helpful for blending. Like really, really helpful. Because especially like world maps or any map really, because before blending was kind of a little bit more meticulous process because of the one brush, this default with a soft edge to it. But now that there's pen pressure, now that there's various brushes, texturing is just a whole different story. So definitely use these official brushes. And just so you know, you can edit them. So if you have this cloudy brush, you can edit it and you can mess with all the settings here. I don't want to go into too much of it because we're only at 10 minutes left in the stream. If you want, we can do a whole tutorial about this. But there's all these different options and presets that you can mess with those brushes. So that way you're not just dealing with just defaults. You can change them. And you can also save a preset. You can label it, save it, and then that way you could say, well, I use this brush particularly for making desert biomes. So then you would relabel it desert brush. Let's say that you have a particular brush that you use for making savanna grass or a swamp or whatever, right? Or water or whatever it might be, white water, waves, whatever you're using, you can go ahead and type in the name of that brush and then save that preset, and then you'll have that available to you. And that's what I definitely recommend. Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit of a learning curve, Tang Whistle. So, but it's okay. Just know that it took me a little while to get used to it. Honestly, it took me a little while, but now that 2.0 is out, I find it just far superior to 1.0 because you can just have more options. You can now move layers in any order that you want. You can have as many mask layers as you want. Before there was just an FG and a BG layer, and those are the only two layers that you could work with. This gives you the option to have as many layers as you want. So it gives you way more control. Now, I understand that if you're kind of a new user or you're familiar with just 1.0 and you're coming into the 2.0 experience, I understand that can seem a little overwhelming because Inkarnate isn't as simplistic as it quite was before, but it does sacrifice some of that simplicity for more options, giving it a more artistic range, allowing you to do more things with it. So, if people get confused about 2.0, don't worry, you can always reach out to myself or to any mentor on our Discord server because I totally understand. It took me like several months just to get used to the arrangement. I was going back and forth, going to the wrong places for things. It was really funny to watch. Just, nope, I forgot that's not there. And I moved this. So I struggled with it. So I hope that makes you feel a little better. All right, let's go ahead and continue with that last bit of stuff I was mentioning here. So we've done that. Why don't we add mask effects? It's not something that I do for every map, but since it's something that gets brought up a lot, let's go ahead and put those down. So I'll go to that mask shape and I'll go ahead and turn on enable land. And you'll have the options here. What I'll do is I'll create maybe a white stroke like this. I don't really care much for how big it is. So what I'll do is I'll bring the scale down and I'll also bring the opacity down. So those are some things that I'll do. Bring the opacity down. That looks good. And we'll also change the size a little bit. I want to have a little bit of white edge there. I don't mind that. That looks good. Let's also put a outer shadow. And I'll make the outer shadow kind of white, which we have this whitish color here. Let's go ahead and bring the intensity up so I can see what it looks like. There we go. Let's bring the blur all the way out. And then we'll bring the intensity down quite a bit. There we go. Now we have a little bit of white shadowing there. You notice that I'm using some hills. Notice that along the shoreline, you notice there's some hill stamps right here. Why don't we show that there is an incline? Like when you go down, it goes down the bank of the river and it goes down to the water. So to show that, why don't we also add an inner shadow to the land to create some depth using contrast? So I'll go back to here. Let's go with an inner shadow. Do you notice how there's a little bit of an inner shadow there? That's fine. Let's go play with that. Let's bring the blur all the way out as far as I can get it. Let's bring the distance out a little bit. And then I'll bring the intensity up just a little bit. I don't want to do too much to where it gets too dark. So I'm just going to keep going until I can see some very clear, darker edges. Oop, that's a little too dark. Let's go down a little bit more. There we go. And now I have this sense of a little bit of a decline or incline, depending where you are. If you're up on the land and you go down to where the water is, down the bank, or if you're in the water, then you have to go up the bank to get to the water. And we're using contrast to do that, right? So a little bit of dark along these edges right here helps to show that there is a little bit of decline there, right? Okay, that looks good. All right. Yeah, I'm glad that you were able to find a little bit of comfort in that. Believe me, it was a struggle for me. I totally understand. Okay. All right. Let me check out for time here. 55. I think we're gonna call it good. But I think we'll make a part 3. We'll make a part 4. So don't worry about that. We'll get to all that stuff, and we will do a full on stream to go over the brush stuff, because the brush stuff is awesome. If you feel intimidated, just know that you don't have to use every brush. Just kind of a heads up. You can still use just some of these basic brushes here. If it, oh no, oh, sorry about that, Rob. Oh no, but you can rewatch it, and I will add it to YouTube as well. Sorry that you missed out on that. That's sad. But just so you know, if you ever feel overwhelmed, you know what? Like, you see all these options, just know that you don't have to use them, right? Like, you don't have to use all of these brushes, okay? Like, it's okay if you just stick to just using 3, but I will say that the more and more you experiment and play with them, edit them, you'll notice that you can get more out of them, right? I've noticed that I was stubborn at first and I only wanted to use these 3 particular brushes. And then when I started playing with the other brushes, I found myself rather liking the options and being able to do stuff with it. It just took me a moment to kind of understand how to play with the presets and figuring out what brushes to use. But now that I have played with them all and I've kind of done some experimenting, I find that the Brush 2.0 is just so much more superior. You can blend your biomes on your world map so much better. You can blend textures on your battle map so much better. It's just these brushes really, really help, because before you just had a soft edge brush and you had to do even more brush strokes to get that blending to work. So the Brush 2.0 is going to shave off so much of your blending time, because blending is time consuming. It's thousands of brush clicks later, right? So these brushes are going to really cut back on the time that it takes for you to make any kind of map. Okay, so definitely use those brushes. Now, so from what I understand is that the brush with a mouse doesn't have it doesn't have sensitivity to it, so you won't be able to deal with pressure when you are using the mouse. So just know that the brushes will still work, but they'll work as if the pen pressure was at 100% when you're using the mouse. So just kind of keep that in mind. You're not going to have brush sensitivity with your mouse. So when you do click with the mouse, it will be as if it's at 100% clicking with a pen, okay? If you don't have a pen, it's okay. The brush works fine. And because these brushes are unique and they have different artifacts in them, you don't need pen pressure for them to work. The pen pressure just helps. It will help to make some things better, right? If you don't own a pen, it's okay. The mouse still works just fine. And if you, just so you know, there are cheap pens out there that work just fine. I recommend like a Huion. They're affordable, they're cheap, they're easy to use. You just need to, I recommend one that comes with the screen instead of like a tablet and a pen. I recommend one that has like a monitor with it. That way you can just use it as your overall monitor when you attach it to your computer or your laptop or whatever you're using. But I definitely recommend a pen if it's within your budget. If not, I totally understand. That's okay, right? But just know that having the pen, not having a pen is not going to make your maps, not as good as if you had one. The pen just makes it easier. And I will say that when it comes to the pen, I only use the pen for maybe 12 things. For the most part, 90% of the actions that I'm doing on the canvas are going to be with the mouse, because trying to scroll through the catalog with a pen is a pain. Trying to scroll through things, trying to select each individual tool with a pen, I find that I only use the pen for very specific things, like maybe I'm doing texturing, maybe I want to create a curve of some kind with a line, right? The pen works great for that. So if you don't have a pen, don't worry about it. That doesn't mean that your maps won't turn out great, because these brushes work so well, including with a mouse. So just kind of keep that in mind. Yes, I don't know if it's a tablet. I think it works on. I've never tried it with like an actual tablet, like one that you hold in your hand with a pen. So I don't know if that works or not. I'm sure it would because my Huion with a monitor worked. I don't understand why one with a tablet would work. So I just prefer the monitor over the tablet because I don't want to have to move it around. I like to have it all set up. But that's up to you, right? It's personal choice. All right, well, I think that is it for the stream. In the next episode, we'll be sure to add in all the juicy details for the river, like fallen logs, waterfalls, rocks, more rapids, all of that stuff. We'll put all of that in the river. We'll also continue some interior decorating, and we'll also add in our trees and vegetation to fill in our negative space because right now all you have are the big structures. We want to throw in trees and vegetation to one contrast against the house and to frame. We also want to frame the road, right? So I want to put in some trees where that dark green grass is to frame the road so that the road will pop out more, right? Right now, it just looks like dirt. It hardly looks like a road. But if you start framing the road with bushes and trees, it starts to single out the road, making it more identifiable. All right. Well, hey, that's it. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I will see you all on Monday. We will add some time lapse videos over the weekend, by the way. All right. Thank you so much. I will see you all next week. Okay. Please stay safe and healthy, and merry map making. Hey, first time chatter, Wintry Mantis. Thank you. Bye bye, everyone. Other first time chatter, Mano. Thank you.